What's up, everybody, and welcome to another KeySmash Studios video. Today we're going to be talking about the top 5 tips for Photoshop as a game designer. Before we start, I want to say that these are in no particular order, but they are created with an emphasis on level design, asset creation, and UI element creation. As we look at our screen here, there's the Photoshop website. We see that Photoshop is used to do some really cool, amazing stuff, incredible art, stuff that most of us can never even imagine or dream of doing. And it's true, it can be used for all of these things that are on their website, but there are still some really useful things that we can do in Photoshop. So people like me who aren't that great at art can still do the art that they need to do for a game and get what they need out of Photoshop without actually having to be decent at art. So I'm going to go through some things that I use for our games here at KeySmash, and these are our top 5 tips. Number 5. So tip number 5 is that you can use the pen tool, and particularly the curvature pen tool, down here on the right side, or the curvature pen tool, to create smooth selections. So this is a scene that we have created for one of our upcoming games. It should be coming out in a week or two. It is a rocket launch game, and we needed a scene for the background. And I wanted it to be stylized and have this type of curvature background showing off this type of valley to a cartoonish mountain in the background. And while I'm not great at art, the curvature tool really helps me in this area by creating a sense of depth with the layers and creates this valley. So when I click here, click up here, and then click down here, it creates a nice curve pattern for us with this pin. And then all we do is we just swap to the other pin and connect back up. So we have this whole connected area, hit selection, and we have this whole selection area that if we really want to, we can paint any color we want. Tip number 4. Tip number 4 is that you can create a bevel effect using layer styles. So as you can see on this is one of the UI elements for our rocket game. It's supposed to be like a steel plate that has this bevel on it. You can open up the layer styles at any time by double clicking the layers, and it opens up this layer style menu. I can remove all my layer styles here just to show off that our layer that I'm editing here is just this entire gray shape. These little dots are the layers that I have that are above it. You can see as I enable certain parts of this, the effects that adds on to our button give it a sense of depth and uniqueness to a UI element. So as I turn on a pattern, it creates a metallic feel. As I turn on a gradient overlay, it creates a source of the light off screen. If I turn on an inner glow, it creates an edge that's distinguishable in the shadows and does nothing to the light part. If I create a shadow, it creates a shadow on some of the lighter parts but does nothing to the dark parts. And if I turn on a bevel, it creates a 3D effect that tricks our mind into thinking this might actually be a 3D button. But layers are a really great way to get the effects that you might want or need on a UI element. Number 3. Tip number 3 is that you can use Photoshop as an editor for 3D model mesh painting. So what I mean by that is this is a UV mesh that has been exported out of Blender. This is the model in question here. So these are all the different faces of this chimney that are exported into a flat 2D sphere object. And all of them have this really neat little gray section here. And I can select each one of them and paint it individually if I so desire. So as I go through, and I've disabled the layers that I already have on here, you'll notice that I first went in and I colored the individual parts of the model that I knew I would need. So all of these white, beige, off-white colors here, these are all the grout on the chimney, and all of the red are the faces that are the external bricks on the chimney. I also put a texture on each of these. So I put a brick texture, which is really just a cement wall picture. So what I did was I put the cement wall on top, just like this, Then I put the color on top of that and switch the layer mode to multiply so that the color gets the texture of the cement wall. And that's what makes our bricks look like bricks. Additionally, I did the same thing with the grout, and what we're left with is a mesh for a 3D model in a 2D space that we can then attach to a 3D model to get a complete 3D model that we might need for a 3D game. So that's one of the ways that you can use Photoshop to start with a UV map and create something really cool. Tip number 2. Tip number 2 is that you can quickly iterate through UI choices with layers and layer modes. In our upcoming game, we have a blueprint scene that is a UI almost nightmare, but it's not a nightmare because of Photoshop. We have 20-something rockets in our game, and each of those rockets needs to have 2 to 3 blueprint UIs created from that rocket. We need one that shows off all the different aspects of our rocket when we customize it, and we also need one that shows off the rocket in the store for our game. Both scenes are done in a blueprint form, so I can use the same background, but the foreground elements change. So you can see on the side of this scene, I actually have a ton of different layers in this scene. And what this is me creating a UI scene for everything that is in these 2 different UI scenes. So on the one hand, we need to have UI like this that has all the different aspects of a rocket and ability to customize it. We also need to have UI that shows our store scene. And while this is all within the same Photoshop file, you'll notice that almost everything on the page moves. And I did this with the extensive use of layers. You can see that I have almost 80 layers in this one Photoshop file. And I'm able to do this and edit every single rocket that's going to be in our game this same way. I can quickly turn off elements that we don't need and create the exact UI designs that we do need to be able to export in PNG form. Tip number 1. Before we get into tip number 1, I'd like to say please like and subscribe to this video if it has helped at all or inspired you to make games at all. I'd like to know down below what your favorite Photoshop tips are. If you think there's something that I'm missing, please let me know down below. I'd love to hear from you. Tip number 1 is that you can create brushes so you only have to do art once. You'll notice that I have hundreds of trees in this one scene that is a level for a game that we are making. But outside of the few trees that are in the foreground, almost every tree comes from 3 different presets. On my pencil brush, I'll come down here to my unique brushes, and you'll see that I have trees and tree trunks selected so that I can paint on top of anything in the shape of a tree. So if I create a dark brown and paint that into the scene, it doesn't look too out of place. I have 3 different iterations of it for this particular scene, but I'm going to show you how to make a new one. I'm going to create a quick new file here, and we're just going to use the curvature pen tool that we talked about before to create one half of the tree trunk. You'll notice that I did the curvature pen tool and then held down Control and clicked to select off that line, and I'm going to do that with the other side of this tree. Then I'm going to come back over here to the curvature pen tool and select one of the line and just connect to the ends. Then just like before, I'm going to create a selection, and on a new layer I'm just going to paint it brown. That way I can select this tree trunk that we've just created in this brown, come up here to edit, and I'm going to come down here to define brush preset. Then I can label this tree 4 because this is the 4th tree that I've made. I can hit OK, and then in a separate scene I can paint with this tree any way that I would like. So right now I have the brush tool on. If I swap to the pencil tool and go to tree 4, I can drop that tree right into the game, so I only have to create the art once. And being able to only create the art once And use fast iteration is something that you will definitely need in almost any game that you make. Anyways, I hope these tips have helped you. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please let me know down below. We're always more than happy to help. Find the link to our Discord in the description below. Be sure to drop in there, give us a hey, what's up? Let us know if you have any questions in there as well. Like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. It really does help. And hopefully we'll see you next week.